Hi, I'm Denise Gorse from Loyola Press, joined today by Father Joseph Tetlow for an Ignatian conversation. Father Joseph Tetlow has spent his life sharing the message of Ignatian spirituality. His books include Considering Jesus, Choosing Christ in the World, and Always Discerning. Welcome back, Father Joe.
Thank you very much, Denise. I'm glad to be here.
Father Joe, it's been 50 years since Father Pedro Arrupe spoke on what is now the idea of people for others. Would you speak to us about being people for others inspired by the gospel?
Well, I think I would say that men for others, men and women for others, people for others, is meant to reassert what Jesus came to assert. We had gotten off of that. The reality is that more than 50 years ago, spirituality had gotten to be very much a matter of our interior life, very individualistic, which is no surprise. Our whole culture is intensely individualistic. The point was that Arrupe was trying to call our attention back to Jesus's point. You are to love one another the way I love you. And the way he loved us was giving himself entirely. So I would say that spirituality had gotten skewed, and that included Ignatian spirituality. We were very individualistic. Of itself, spirituality is, if I give you a technical definition, a disciplined asceticism of love for God, for others, and for self. A spirituality is a disciplined asceticism. Well, what is the asceticism? The asceticism is living my life to help those who are around me. When we talk about persons for others, we are talking very seriously about going against American individualism. We're talking very seriously about having perspectives, perceptions. So I do not see foreigners or strangers. I see a person. This person may, as a matter of historical fact, belong to another nation, but that's secondary to me. What I see, first of all, is the person. That's what Arrupe was trying to call us back to. Because Jesus tells us, you are to love one another the way I love you. And I would like to say something, pushing that a little bit further, Denise.
Okay.
May I make a point about how Jesus's good news has spread?
Please.
Because it's exactly by each of us being, in some measure at least, for others. Right now, Denise, I'm sure you've seen this statistic. It's in many places. It's not just Church Report. It's in many places. About 1/3 of all humankind now believe in Jesus Christ, some way or other. Now, none of us believes exactly the same way, but about 1/3. Well, how did 1/3 of humankind get to believe in Jesus Christ? And the way is very simple. It goes from one person to another. That's how it spread. And the way belief in Jesus is spread is by being a person for others. How do we do that? Well, Jesus knew what he had to do in several ways. First of all, he was to do always what the Father wanted. How did he know that? Well, he knew that there were some things he had to do. Early on, he tells his parents, who left him in the temple unknowingly, didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business? And then he tells his disciples, I must go to the other towns. The Son of Man must be handed. Must was a big thing for him. So for us, when I see somebody who needs help, I better feel like I must do it. Sometimes I don't, but I ought to feel it. So must is the first way we know what God, like Jesus. But the next way Jesus knew what God wanted him to do was by what people asked him for. It seems a wonderful fact to me that only once did Jesus say no. And he couldn't keep saying no because it was a mother whose daughter was sick. And she would not let him keep saying no. And finally he said, do you believe this is a pagan woman down by Tyre? Do you believe I can help? And she said, my daughter's sick. She obviously believed it. That's why she was there. And then Jesus knew two things. One, he could help her. And so he said yes. And secondly, the Father was sending the Spirit to give faith to non-Jews. And before long, right after this trip, actually, we find him over with the Gadarenes on the far side of the lake, multiplying loaves for 4,000 and curing them one by one. So that's how he knew what the Father wanted. And that is how we ought to be people for others. That's the short answer, Denise.
Well, that's enough to think about for today, for sure. Thank you, Father Joe. And thank you to our viewers for joining us today. Visit us at ignatianspirituality.com for more Ignatian inspiration. Peace.